right, so welcome. This is our first in-person supplier forum since 2019. Our last one was in October of 2019 in Toulouse, France. It's hosted by Airbus, and I really want to thank Rolls-Royce today for hosting us for the AESQ Supplier Forum. So we're super excited to have everybody here. We've been very thoughtful about the agenda and what we're going to talk about today. We've had a lot of virtual supplier forums over the last couple of years to stay connected, make sure we understand that we're a community of quality professionals and that we're all interested in the same thing, which is zero defects. Today we have over 130 individuals from 7 countries, so we just want to welcome everybody. I think that's fantastic to get together and talk about this day. We have an FAQ panel at the end of the day for the 13,100 specification. So one thing I want to ask is that as we go through the content throughout the day, think through the questions that you have. Right now is the time to get them answered. We have all of our member companies here. We have representatives that you can talk to from a customer standpoint, as well as different suppliers if you want to ask questions in terms of how they've approached something. So think about your questions. You can write them up on the board, or you can just hold them for asking later. But I definitely suggest that you take advantage of this time and get some of those questions answered. So the supplier forums, if you've not been to one, you know, this is your day to learn and to grow and to meet people. Take advantage of the breaks and lunch in terms of talking to others about 13,100 and the quality standards. We typically try to have these 2 per year. We did really well for a long time until you know, a little thing like the COVID pandemic hit us, and we all had to kind of change the way we approach our suppliers and in the aerospace business. So we went to the virtual supplier forums. The great thing is we've been able to kind of touch a lot more people that way. There's been, you know, over thousands of people that we've been able to touch via webinars and newsletters, but it's not the same as being in person. So we're happy to be here today. You know, again, the purpose of today is the 13,100 deployment. So going into great detail there, going through each of the standards, again, answering your questions. We have the reference materials out there that we're going to talk about in terms of where you can see them, the content, and hear from the subject matter experts along the way. And as I said, we've been very thoughtful in our agenda in terms of what you might want to hear based off of the feedback we've been given via the website and other things. So, you know, as we roll through the day, and I'm not going to go through this in great detail because I think you've seen a bit of it in the registration, but as we go through, we're going to talk about the standard itself, frequently asked questions. We have a section on APQP. We have you know, a deployment survey update. We've been sending out some surveys to ask, you know, where are you in your journey? Where might you need help? That feedback we've kind of pulled together, and we're going to show you there. Next group. So we have a training overview, what training is required, where might you find it, what are some of the specifics around that, as well as an OEM requirements section. So if you want to hear from, you know, the resident experts at GE, Pratt Whitney, Rolls-Royce, Safran, et cetera, on how they have incorporated 13,100 and what might be slightly different at each of the member companies. And then we're going to talk about a zero defect journey. So in the end, we're going to wrap it up with the fact that at a higher level, all of this is working our way towards a zero defect journey. It is not an overnight task. It's made up of multiple years and multiple you know, efforts. The things we do today really affect the quality of tomorrow. And so we're doing that for the future and talking about how to get involved. So I'd like to start us off. We have several polls and things throughout the day. And so this is really just kind of a fun way to get started. You want to pull out your phones, and I will show you in a second. There's a QR code. You want to scan that QR code. I think I'm kind of in the way here. Scan the QR code. Type in the password at the bottom. or there's a paper on your table. Either way. And the passcode is the small one at the bottom, which you should also have at your table. O4KCBN. We'll give you a couple minutes, but then once you're in, you're in. So on the future polls, you won't have to redo this. It'll just continue to pop up throughout the day. So what city do you live in? We have a passcode city. I'm not sure where that is. I hope it's beautiful. A lot of Indianapolis. We have London, St. George, Connecticut, Trollhättan. I think I know who that is. Helen, our Swedish friend. Pittsburgh, Paris, Reynosa, Mexico. Good. Lots of GE Cincinnati folks. Okay, so now we know everybody can get in and we'll be able to answer poll questions. Okay, so I want to, kind of last but not least, couple things. I want to thank our customer that is here, Airbus. You can kind of raise your arms if you're still in the room. Just talking to you. Really appreciate you being there. So we have Jason Hurd and Bill Demarchik from our Cincinnati office here. Airbus has been an incredible supporter of AESQ since the beginning. And like I said, it even hosted the last Supplier Forum in Toulouse. So we greatly appreciate their partnership throughout the years. And it's great to have that connection between the customer, engine manufacturers, and then the supply base to kind of make a full connection there. Okay. All right, so next, we are at Rolls-Royce, and so we are very grateful for them hosting. I want to introduce Candace Binyard, Director of Programs Defense at Rolls-Royce. In this role, Candace is responsible for the profit and loss for the global portfolio of engines being delivered from the original equipment side of our value stream, which includes aerospace, naval, and power systems. So I'm going to welcome Candace up. And then here's the clicker. Okay.
Let's see if I can get the mic. Can you all hear me? Thank you very much for that very, very warm welcome, and welcome all of you to our great city of Indianapolis. Really good to see a lot of names there as you all were doing the Slido. Indianapolis was fairly large. I did see Phoenix on the map. Sorry, the cold weather is just starting to come in, so you all will get in and out just in time. And again, we're very pleased to host you all, so hopefully your time spent here will be very, very productive. Realizing that it may be many of your first time here to Indianapolis and your first time to Rolls-Royce, figured that it would be a good idea just to give you a little bit of the lay of the land. Won't take you through a whole chart deck on everything that we do, but just by way of some numbers, you know, we have over 3,300 some odd employees based here in Indianapolis. And from a Rolls-Royce perspective, we actually have the largest Rolls-Royce manufacturing facility and footprint here in North America. And with those sorts of numbers, plus the $2.5 billion in annual revenues coming out of Indy, we are also one of the largest manufacturing facilities or companies here in the city, if not the second largest. So many of our customers you all will recognize and share as well. We have the USDOD, who is our largest customer, as well as some major airframers. In just a minute, I'll share the products that we manufacture here on site, as well as assemble and test. But many of our applications support both the civil and defense operations. And so again, from a supply chain perspective, a big supply chain, 565 some odd, probably plus suppliers. And so this is why this forum is really, really important, because with that sort of supply base, really important that those standards are understood and embedded, and as best we can as an industry, you know, standardized and well understood. In terms of our facilities, just to draw your attention, we have a pretty large footprint, as I said before, here in Indianapolis. So And this top box here, you'll see the top box on the right-hand side. The yellow that you see is would have been a building space that would have been just attached on here behind us. And that was a part of our facility that was demoed because we went through extensive renovations and upgrade of our facilities. And so we today are located just in the back, far right there at the UAW Training Center. We also have on this side of the facility as well, or this side of the highway, our operations, which are comprised of our performance and victory buildings, which is where we do our heavy manufacturing and assembly and test. Just in that same box down here on the left, across the road from us, I'm from the South, so you won't hear me say a lot of south and east and west. I'm going to say across the road, around the corner, and hopefully you can follow. I see some smiles in the room. So just across the street, that blue box there that's down at the bottom is our excellence building, and that's really where a lot of our R&D takes place, and we do have employees based in there. The middle box is our Meridian Center. So for our employees that are not attached to the day-to-day operations, they are downtown at the Meridian Center, and we house about 1,100 some odd employees there from a capacity standpoint, but there too we've gone through some renovations and have consolidated our footprint in the downtown area, but a large presence downtown. There across the bottom, we have just specialized facilities across Indianapolis. So we've got our single crystal operations, we've got our bandit stators, and we have lift works. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program, and we do the MRO overhaul and repair of the lift fan and all of the modules because we create that lift system for that application. And so that facility is out in Plainfield, which is also here in Indianapolis proper. And then we have our controls facility, which is a partnership that we've recently undertaken with Purdue up in West Lafayette. So again, pretty large and vast footprint when you think about what makes up Rolls-Royce here in the Indianapolis area. In terms of our products, this is not a comprehensive list, and you'll probably look at this chart and immediately say, where's the B-52? These guys want a B-52, and we're very proud of that program. We are in the process, obviously, of transitioning that supply chain and standing up, our production facilities here. But just to give you a feel for what really makes up a lot of what we do here in the city in terms of our manufacturing, and our assembly and test, the AE family of engines has really been our staple. The AE family of engines, when you combine it with T56, which you see at the bottom chart, have been powering the C-130 since 1954. And so that AE engine has several derivatives. And so we have the 2100, I won't name them all, but we've got the 2100 D3 engine, which we assemble, manufacture, and test here, which powers the C-130J. We also have the AE1107, which powers the V-22 Osprey. And so, again, when you look at this particular product portfolio, it's really, really, I would say, carried us and lifted us over the years, and we've been able to really build onto that core technology into other product lines that we've developed. And then we also have our helicopter product line. So we've got the M250, which powers the Bell applications, as well as the RR300, which powers Robinson. And so our product portfolio in that regard really covers both defense applications as well as civilian and humanitarian medical operations as well. And then I mentioned the lift system. We provide the lift system, and we give that particular, the F-35B, the lift capability, and that we produce the lift fan, and there are several modules that go with it to include the 3-bearing swivel module. And then we are in partnership with Pratt Whitney, who provide the engine. So really, really cool technology. But again, a lot of this work from a manufacturing, assembly, and test are done right here in Indianapolis by our great employees. And so on my last slide, because I don't want to kill you, as I say, with a bunch of PowerPoint, this forum that you all are here for, and I know, as was mentioned, the traveling that you all do have done to come together is really impressive. What many of you don't know, and what wasn't stated at the intro, is that, I used to lead quality. So Tracy Lockhart is our quality lead for Rolls-Royce, and she wears that cross. And I used to lead the quality organization as well. And so this is really near and dear to my heart. And what's mostly exciting to me is to see that all of us are coming together as industry to really drive zero defects. And when you think zero defects, it sounds like that is just, you know, a place we'll never reach, but we can and we will. And it's important that we do, because we've got to join destiny in all of it. So really good to see all of you here. The bullets on this chart I know won't come as a surprise to any of you. And so as you're leaning into the strategy and really working together throughout today and the days to come and the days ahead, please know that, you know, we're very proud to be a part of this group, and very excited, certainly, once again, to have you here in Indianapolis with us, and just hope you all have a very, very productive time here with us. And so with that, I'm going to let you all get on with your day. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you again for coming.
Thank you so much. As a token of AESQ appreciation for speaking, I'll give you that pen.
Well,
thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you
very
so much. All right. So next we will introduce Lisa Clavalou, so Director of Group Quality for Pratt Whitney, and go over a little bit about the AESQ team and journey.
Good morning. Hopefully you can all hear well. We're all using different types of mics. So thank you, Barbara, for the introduction, and to Candace. You really said it well with the zero defects journey. That is why we're here. And I wanted to start off giving you a little bit of history about why AESQ, when it was founded, why it was founded. And if you think back 10 years ago, the world has changed. But when we started AESQ about 10 years ago, customers expected zero defects. That hasn't changed. Airline passengers projected to double in size over the next 20 years. Still, the projections of our ramp are incredible. All of you, I'm sure, are feeling the resurgence of air travel. I know every flight I've been on in the last 6 months has been totally full. Airports are busy. Travel is back. We have an increasing level of supplier-made engine content, and thank you all for coming today. You are suppliers of the components we're talking about. And so as we increase the supplier-made content of our engines, we need to make sure that we're partnering for that zero defects journey. The global supplier footprint. We are more and more global. And Barbara mentioned the supplier forums that we hold. We hold them around the globe. And so the next forum is actually in about 2 weeks, and it will be in Massy, France. So we'll hold a US-based North America forum, and we'll hold one in Europe this fall. We have a large number of common suppliers between engine manufacturers. Many of you sitting here supply to not just one OEM, not just to Pratt Whitney, for example, but you're also supplying to others. And you're going to see some data on that later this morning. There's a wide range of aerospace engine supplier businesses. It runs the gamut. Less than $1 million, small shops, 10 or 15 people, all the way up to multi-billion-dollar companies. And improving safety, quality, delivery, and cost in that order is critical to our business. Safety first, quality. So the Aero Engine manufacturers created a collaboration working group called the AESQ Aerospace Engine Supplier Quality. If you think back 10 years ago, 2012, we each flowed requirements from regulators, customers, industry requirements, our AS13100 certification standards, etc. We were all flowing them in separate ways. Rolls had Sabre, GE S1000, Pratt flows ASQ R01, and they were all saying, essentially, we were trying to capture the similar requirements, but all saying it in different language. So you were all seeing the effect of that. You needed folks to manage each of our set of requirements and assure that you were delivering to what we needed and what we needed to stay safe and what we needed to improve quality. Fast forward, we have commonized on most of the flow down requirements that we send to you. We have commonized in a standard called 13,100. And so I would say we still have a little bit of work to do, and some of you may be feeling that, and you may ask questions about that on that bit over on the right where it's specific requirements. So we are going to continue to work and strive towards commonality of quality requirements. So the vision is to establish and maintain a common set of quality requirements that enable global aero engine supply chain to be truly competitive through lean capable processes and a culture of continuous improvement. That was the mission and is the mission of AESQ, all striving for zero defects. And you're going to hear over the course of this day the specifics about the 13,100 standard, about the zero defect journey. You're going to hear from some of you in the audience. We have a few suppliers that we thank for coming forward and sharing the story of implementing and deploying 13,100 in their businesses and how they're doing it. So the guiding principles were to simplify and standardize requirements. We removed a lot of the repetition and duplication, the redundancy across all of our requirements documents, and we deployed one standard, 13,100. A common language for quality. We were actually flowing many requirements, but saying it in different ways. They were similar, they were the same. They came from, for instance, a regulatory requirement, and we would change the language and say it in our words. It just causes confusion in the industry. We were building on existing standards. We're not trying to take the place of AS9100. This supplements it for engine manufacturers. We all are stewards of safety in our industry. And there's no difference. We're not in a competitive environment in terms of safety. We all need to be striving for zero defects and perfect safety. So the strategy group was formed. Company members today: GE Aviation, Pratt Whitney, Rolls-Royce, Safran, MTU, GKN, Honeywell, Howmet, IHI, and PCC. We're members that were in the founding group. We also have new members: Cincinnati Thermal Spray, Consolidated Precision Products, CPP, Parker Meggitt, and Solar Atmospheres. And we encourage all of you to join AESQ. There will be some information on that towards the end of the day. And here are the folks that represent the membership. Everyone on this page is passionate about quality and passionate about safety. So I just wanted to show the faces. You'll see some of us. Barbara spoke earlier, myself, Helen from GKN, Uzam, who's not here today, from Rolls-Royce. He will be in Massy, France. Denis from Safran, he is here in the audience today. June Sakai, Barry Hicklin, Thomas Frank, Jamie Clifton, and Osa from Howmet. So thanks to these folks, but it's not just this group. There are dozens of employees and passionate professionals behind each one of us at our companies that helped craft the standard and set the bar for quality. So I want to end my piece with a short video. Some of you have seen this before, and it's actually on our website, the AESQ website. And I encourage you to take this video from the website and share it with your teams back at your sites. And this really describes how the set of tools work together towards zero defects. So I will turn it over to Becky to load the video.
Today, more than 3 billion passengers travel by air every year, and this is set to double over the next 20 years. These air passengers trust us with their lives. Naturally, our customers expect us to deliver defect-free products and services every single time. After all, that's our promise. But how do we guarantee zero defects when we know that inspection can never be 100% effective at sorting the good from the bad? The answer is to avoid producing defects in the first place. To this end, defect prevention activities are built into our advanced product quality planning and process control requirements as an end-to-end process, with each step being integral to defect-free production. Here's how it works. Firstly, we have product quality planning. This is where the design team works directly with the customer to understand what the product needs to do. From this, a product design can be created. Cross-functional teams then carry out design risk analysis to ensure that potential design risks are identified, understood, and mitigated. There are a number of ways this might be carried out. For example, by using a design failure mode and effects analysis tool. Next, the team designs and develops a capable manufacturing process to make the product. Any risk of this process bringing about non-conformance is evaluated using a process FMEA, and any such risks are mitigated to ensure that the manufacturing or assembly process will produce defect-free products. The appropriate levels of defect prevention controls are defined using the relevant information. For high-severity risks, we must strive for mistake-proofing, while we can address other risks through statistical process control, inspection, or audit. All this is captured in the control plan. We then ensure the capability of the measurement and visual inspection methods required by the control plan. Once verified, we can start to measure the capability of the process to ensure it makes defect-free parts. The Delegated Product Release Verification Program provides a common standard for inspector competency and qualifications. Once in production, the role of manufacturing and assembly is not just to maintain the initial capability level, but to continually improve it to ensure customer and business targets are met. Moreover, data from our processes and inspection must be used to control the process by allowing us to take action before defects are made. If things do go wrong, our problem-solving process must identify and eliminate the root cause so that it cannot happen again. Furthermore, learning from the investigation needs to be fed back into the FMEA, enabling it to be captured and shared. The Aero Engine Supplier Quality Group standards have been created to provide clear requirements on how these defect prevention tools are to be effectively deployed. There is a clear expectation that each of us will deploy these requirements and cascade them down through our supply chain. The final stage of our defect prevention process is an effective audit of the quality system, manufacturing processes, products, and special processes. This review reinforces compliance and can identify further opportunities for improvement. Of course, to be effective, all these tools rely on good cross-functional working and leadership that creates an environment intolerant of non-conformance. After all, defect prevention is a key route to achieving our promise of defect-free products and services. AESQ, raising the standard for quality.
So this little video, again, I encourage you all to take this back, access it on the website, and share it within your sites. But this video describes how we get to zero defects. It's by defect prevention. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Larry Bennett, who is going to get into more details about the AS 13100 standard itself. And Larry is a consulting engineer with GE Aviation. So thank you, Larry.
Yep. Can you hear me okay? Most people that's heard me don't usually need a mic, but we'll mic up today to make sure everybody hears the message clearly. As Lisa said, I'm Larry Benton. I work at GE Aviation. I am a consulting engineer. I own the quality system requirements reporting to Barbara DeGroy, and pleased to be here with you today to talk about AS13100. I always start this section with taking you back about 20 years ago when I was in a role similar to some of you, in a supplier role, working at a supplier to GE, and wondering, why do we have so many requirements? As a quality manager at a supplier, you know you have multiple customers, and each of them has their unique requirements. So I'm sitting there saying, why can't we standardize and rationalize these requirements so there's a set of requirements? Fast forward to 2018, and Barbara called and said, Larry, how would you like to join a team that we're spinning up to standardize requirements across the supply chain? So 20 years ago, I was requesting that, and then to be asked to be part of the team to develop this, it was not just a yes, but how soon? So privileged to be part of that team. About 5 or 6 of us met in London, led by Dr. Riggs, and we sat there for about a week rationalizing some of this stuff. We met on a weekly basis until March of 2021, when the document was published. So pleased to be a part of that journey. You can see here the life cycle where we were. You know, we had 9145 phases. You know, AS 9145 was published in 2016, but really still today, we're still trying to take those first steps to implement and deploy that across the aerospace industry. And you can see across the timeline from planning and phase 2, 3, 4, 5, we had the AS 13000 series documents out there as part of the framework. And so then when you go from it, as we said, we took the OEM requirements, we had the existing AS 13000 series documents, and then we harmonized those into one set of requirements. And you can see over here is the future state, future engine manufacturer supplier requirements, which are now what's left over. And as Lisa mentioned, we are still actively working to harmonize those even more. But try as we might over the course of 18 months, we couldn't come to terms with some of those issues. And thus we have 13,100. We have engine maker specific requirements, albeit minimal in most cases. And then we're stating that the overall number of requirements have been reduced by more than 50% when you align those OEM requirements against each other. And I can tell you that I actually did this exercise for our leadership. I took all of the 4 OEM requirements, added in all of the industry requirements, and we had a stack about this big. And fortunately, we're about here now. We want to get to lower, but this is where we are today. And obviously, we still have the reference manuals that are just an outstanding resource for you to deploy. We like to say that the 13100 is the requirement, and our reference manuals is the best practice of how to satisfy or comply with those requirements. There should be no requirements in the RMs. We've worked hard to try to remove the shalls so that they truly are guidance material. The other thing that's important to understand is from an industry perspective, we took the 9100 numbering and convention and we added requirements to it. We didn't create a new document structure, a new numbering structure. We just played with the existing 9100 structure. So everything is numbered aligned and consistent with that. And as I mentioned, these are the OEM specific requirements. They'll be signposted, specifically how GE does. We just take S1000 and we say that you shall meet 13100, except, and we list the items that are an exception to 13100, be them minimal or be them extensive in some cases. So at this time, I think we have a poll question. Just try to understand what type organizations we have today in the room with us today. You can see here there are 5 different types of organizations. So just we'll do this poll and see where we land. So you can scan the QR code, or I think they're on your table as well. So I think we know to do the drill because everybody was able to do it previously. And it should be live polling, and the results should come up. All right. Well, it looks like it's about a 40, 39. So a lot of make to print and some design and make to print as well. So the reason we highlight this question is because the requirements are different depending on the type of organization. And I get asked this question a lot. Specifically, I want to highlight this type 5 raw material. So I get asked a question. Okay, I'm a cast or forge source. What am I? Because you're a raw material input to a prime supplier, but as a supplier, as a individual organization, you are not a raw material supplier, even though you are maybe a raw material input to a machining supplier. You are, if you're a cast or forge source, you are a manufacturer, make to print, because you're making that casting and forging to a specific configuration. Just as an example. And some of the benefits for 13100 are pretty self-explanatory. We mentioned a lot of these in my dialogue. We do have a single standard aligned to 9100. We are supported by free reference manuals. We have not highlighted that yet, but all the reference manuals are free material out on the AESQ website. So from a cost standpoint, we went from having to buy individual AS 13000 series documents to now you only have to purchase the 13100, and that's the only document you'll need to purchase going forward. Because the 13001, I believe, is a free document as well, and all the RMs are free. Creates a common language, aligns the relevant existing industry standards, supported by global approved training resources. It enables us to provide a harmonized approach. Supplier compliance continues to be assessed through customer audit. That's also a question that's asked a number of times. Each individual customer is responsible to manage compliance to 13100. We do not have an overarching accreditation process like we do for 9100. We are talking about that as an industry and as a team. But today, you will be measured and managed by each individual customer. We're hoping to use the compliance audit requirement as objective evidence to satisfy that, and we're still trying to rationalize that across the industry. You can see some of the highlights from the document itself. The current standard incorporated all the existing 13100 shall requirements, and you can see we also incorporated a lot of the AS industry specs. FOD, software, DPRV, counterfeit parts, etc. Human factors, certification requirements, supplier code of conduct, the compliance assessment, RM 13009. 4 audit types, AESQ Quality Foundation Training Course, on-the-job training, and auditor competencies. Common record retention across the OEMs. There might be a subtle difference between some, but most of those record retention requirements have been commonized. Compliance to fraud prevention. In the design space, if you are a design manufacturer responsible, we have commonized the requirements for that. We're asking that you use DFMEA as your design risk analysis tool, recognizing that you may already have a proven tool that's equivalent to that, which is acceptable as well. And over on the right, significant input on suppliers. We know the risk associated with sub-tier suppliers. Every degree of separation creates its own unique set of complications. And thus, we wanted to instill a rigor related to your, as a prime supplier, ability to manage sub-tier suppliers. And that covers the full gambit of selection, control, and performance monitoring. Also, the requirements related to material, counterfeit material, 8D problem solving, and making sure that we have a independent method to manage the raw material that's metallic in nature, to make sure we don't have commingling and mixing of materials at the point of use. We also have Chapter B, which talks about APQP and PPAP. That's product quality planning, production approval process. And I'd be remiss not to continue to highlight, this has been shown forum to forum, but the significant contribution made by the writing team, as well as all of the 99 subject matter experts that contributed to the reference manuals, as well as significant input to the document itself. Just a tremendous job by the entire organizations. Again, just highlighting all of the vast knowledge of information that's in the reference manuals. And with that, turn it over to Earl. Want the mic? Okay.
Hear me now. I also have a big mouth, so I probably don't need this, but. So I wanted to talk to you about the transition or the evolution to AS13100. This shouldn't be a surprise, right? If you look at 9145, it came out in 2016. The airframers, the military customer, they all started their journey in deploying it. So what we did is we created a process to deploy it, and that's AS13100 Chapter B. But we've asked you to be compliant to that or work towards that with our PPAP processes, right? So this isn't new. AS13100 8D, that was the very first standard we worked on as a committee. So that was deployed in 2014. So if you go look at S1000 or AESQ R1 or a SAFE, Sabre, you'll see that called out. And I won't read each one, but you can get the message that as we roll these out, they were deployed within our procedures and standards. So they've been out for quite a while. I mean, the last one to be released was AS13006 process control, and that was in 2018. So the team created these 5 standards. We were about to publish 2 new ones on audit, 13005 and 13007. And then very likely with human factors being a rule now, driven by the regulatory requirements, that would have probably been a 3rd requirement. So we kind of realized we missed our mark, right? Because you still had a pretty lengthy AESQ R01, pretty lengthy S1000, and so on and so forth, right? So what we did is we consolidated all those documents that we created. We took out any reference material that was within the AS1300 series, and we put them in the reference material, right? And all the shells are in AS13100. So with the intent of simplifying things, right? So the only thing that's newer would be human factors, sub-tier management, and audit, right? So YASA has rules on human factors. The FAA is right behind them. TCCA, all the regulatory agencies are deploying human factors. You're going to see a lot more around safety management. The FAA has just rolled out some new language in June. They're still solidifying it, but that would probably fall into human factors also. Sub-tier management's kind of common sense, right? You need to manage your sub-tiers. If your sub-tiers drop the ball, you drop the ball, and then we drop the ball to our customer. And then audit. We spent a lot of time in audit. Jim Wilson's going to talk about that later on today. But the intent of what we put in for audit was to make your lives easier so you can show us that you're doing robust audits so we can audit you less. When we started this journey, one of the committee members says, hey, in a 30-day month, I'm entertaining 28 days with you guys. So I have 2 or 3 people tied up doing audits. How do we come up with a better process? So we rolled that into AS13100. So with all that said, we reduced the number of pages from 174 to 102. We reduced the number of shells by 23%. So this does make your life better. It does make your life easier. It's an adjustment. It's a change. With that said, we created 603 pages of reference material. The reference material is to help you. It's not to make your life miserable, right? It's guidance material. One thing that's very, very important, like Larry was up here a couple of minutes ago, many of the folks who are on this committee are also on the IQG writing team, right? So they're on the team for 9100. They're on the team for 9102, 9145. So it's the same professionals that are helping create this standard, creating the reference material, creating the training material. So there's a lot of synergy there and a lot of energy goes into it. And it's not perfect, but we're going to work to perfection. It's going to take a couple passes, right? It's a lot of work to create what we've created. So with that said, and like Larry showed, we're really working on deploying this as is, but it's going to take a little bit of time. You know, just like you have to make adjustments to your QMS, we have to make adjustments to ours. But please use the reference material. I'm going to talk about training later on, very important, but it has been an evolution. You're really not getting sideswiped by AS 13100 because it's been out from 2015 to 2019. And it's going to continue to grow as the industry goes. But, you know, just like you, we need to meet the regulatory requirements. We need to meet the requirements of the military customer. And we need to meet the big uptick in work. It's goodness, right, that we have this challenge ahead of us. So I highlighted items in yellow. And from experience, this is where we had to do a little bit of work in my world at Pratt, right? We had to make some adjustments to audit. We had to make some adjustments to sub-tier. We really didn't have to make any adjustments to design work. But when you do your self-assessment, RM13009, hopefully you've already done it, you may have a little bit of work to do in those areas. But it's not an overwhelming amount of work. It's just you need to make sure you're aligned to it. So I wanted to, highlight those and make sure you're using those RMs, and it'll help you be successful. So next up is Lisa, Liz, and Jim.
Okay, thank you,
Oh,
Earl. Oh. No, I've got this on. Flicker. Okay, so where are we now, right? This morning already, we've heard from Lisa and Larry and Earl, kind of the background and the overview, the AESQ, what the vision was, why we did this, how we got together, what the results and the benefits are. And so now I just wanted to talk a little bit about deployment. My name is Elizabeth Pace. I'm from Raytheon Technologies. I'm actually the lead for the deployment team for the AESQ. And the document was actually released in March of 2021. And we recognized that this was going to be a long journey over some time. And over the last 18 months, we've really kind of laid out a plan on how ourselves as the OEMs and our partner suppliers would become compliant to these and then flow it down to our supply base. So our deployment team kicked off in October of 2021. Then, and these are really just kind of milestones from the supplier forums where we did come and speak to you virtually and, just kind of laid out a plan saying that as the suppliers to the OEMs, these are kind of the milestones and the steps that you should be taking. So in 2021, the OEMs, we all sat down and we said, okay, let's go through and do our gap analyses. Let's use the AS 13009 and see where we stand now as to the document that's been released. Let's build a plan and make sure that we make the changes to our own internal QMSs so that we ourselves are compliant to this document. Now for 2022, we've really been focused on now how do we get the supply base ready, right? So we've made those updates to the QMS internally in our own facilities. We've started to train our employees on the new requirements. We've done our own internal AS 13100 pre-audits, but now we're starting to pulse the supply base. We've done 3 surveys, which I have some results on as well, which have driven the conversations that we've had at the supplier forums. We're really working on closing our own gaps. We've updated our QMS requirements documents. So now all of the OEMs are flowing this to the suppliers as well. So again, I just bring this up. Lisa had talked about all the member companies. Our OEMs have all now released those supplier quality requirements, which invoke AS13100. Our partner suppliers have also begun to do that as well. Now I'm going to turn over to Jim Wilson.
That me? All right. Woohoo. It's been suggested I need a shock collar because I tend to run on about my subject. So just somebody start waving if I'm going too long.
I might kick you.
Yep, there you go. Wouldn't be the first time. All right, my wonderful slide that I get to present is, a lot of you are probably sitting in the room wondering, well, what happens on January 1st when all of this becomes contractual? I think. The AESQ, the members of the AESQ are dealing with a lot of different subjects. We are trying to get coordinated in how we are not only applying AS13100 through our various documents, SAFE and all those documents you've been hearing about, but how we are going to be working with suppliers moving forward on January 2nd. Okay, so there are certain things that we know are going to happen, and there are other things that are under extensive communication between the members trying to say, okay, let's do it this way. Let's all do it this way. Let's not have one of us go in and do that, and the other one goes in and does that, and that's going to drive the suppliers nuts. Believe me, there's a lot of conversation going on right now, and I'll talk a little bit on the next slide about some of that. But here's what you can expect, okay? Contractually, and you're all going to not like this maybe, but contractually, okay, we're going to be checking compliance. Like Liz said, we're already pulsing our suppliers right now. Some of the OEMs are bugging you to see your RM 13009 self-checklist, right? We're trying to make sure that our suppliers are getting to the point where they need to on January 1st. But as of January 1st, contractually, you all need to be compliant to 13,100, right? So what can happen is we are going to start checking with our suppliers very seriously that, hey, show us that you're compliant. Demonstrate to us that you're compliant. The best way to do that is the RM 13009 self-assessment checklist, which you all should have done months ago. In fact, we originally suggested you do that in September of 2021, was on the first slide that Liz just showed you as far as the rollout goes. So if you haven't done that yet, you're in serious trouble. If you have and you've identified gaps and you're working on the gaps, you're in trouble. Hopefully you've closed those gaps, you're probably going to be okay. So that's where you should be. So you could expect that any of your customers are going to want to see a copy of that to confirm that you are compliant as of January 1st. Another way to do that is what we were talking about, the annual audit report. Earl was talking about it. One of our goals of the AESQ, when we set out, like, Helen, what, 7-8 years ago on the supplier audit section, was to try and minimize what Earl was talking about, the number of days that we're coming in and wasting your time with audits. We know sometimes those are annoying. We know that we come in and do an audit on a subject, GE comes in the next week and does an audit on that same subject, et cetera, et cetera. And as we found out, a lot of our requirements were very similar. There's slight little differences, but we're all asking you about retention periods. And guess what? Most of those retention periods are almost the same, but up till now, you would have had to keep all those separate retention periods for each one of your customers. So one of the things, but we can't share audits. So going forward, if one of us comes in and does an AS13100 physical audit, we can't share it with the other members, right? We're not going to share our Pratt audit with GE, and they can't share theirs with Rolls-Royce. So we came up with the idea of the annual audit report. And if you haven't read this, it's in section 925. Basic, and there's an RM 13005, which gives you the how-to, and there's an attachment, or there's an extra file, in a spreadsheet file, in the section where you go get RM 13005. There's a draft of the annual audit report. The annual audit report is a report of all of the activities, audit activities that have gone on during the year. So internal audits, customer audits, regulatory audits, NADCAP audits, and lists them out in a generic way. We're trying to get it done generically. So a customer came in and did an AS13100 audit. Here were the findings and here were the closing actions. That's all it should say. The idea of the annual audit report is and again, it's only on an annual basis. The idea is you can then provide that report to us when we're doing our risk analysis about who we're going to go on site and do audits next year. That audit report will help, as I think Earl said, show us that you have a robust audit process, both internally and with your supply base. Maybe we don't have to come in and do an audit. Maybe we send you a mail-in audit. Maybe we postpone the audit for a year or two. Now, the annual audit report technically isn't contractual as of January 1st of this year because it should cover 1 year of 13,100. But if you want to, based on all of the audit activity that are being done this year, that might be another factor you could provide your customers to keep them away for a while rather than having them come in. The other thing, again, contractually, there are 4 different types of audits that have been described in 13,100. There's a requirement to complete those audits in some cases on a frequency that you have to meet. So the audit plan for 2023 should incorporate the requirements of AS 13,100. So you could expect that your customers are going to want to see a copy of that plan to make sure that you're on the right path as far as doing those audits, both internally and with the supply base. And again, you know, it's not a big deal. A lot of that is risk-based decisions on how you're going to audit, et cetera, et cetera. So it's up to you. And then, you know, we actually may start auditing. It's one of the subjects that we're talking about among us. You know, there will be high-risk suppliers where we are going to want to go in and physically confirm that, you know, you are meeting the requirements of 13,100. You do the 2 top ones, maybe it'd be less likely you get that on-site audit. I'm gonna breathe once in a while. Forward. All right, one of the ways we're trying to help you is the AS 13,100 checklist. I call it the master checklist. We're putting this together right now. And what it is basically a replacement for the RM 13,009 self-assessment checklist. If any of you have ever looked at that, it is really lean on information. It's just the section number, how do you meet it? We want to expand that a little bit to talk about individual paragraphs because that doesn't happen in the current checklist. We want to give you a reference to where that question was coming from. Now, unfortunately, we can't put in the actual text for section 443, paragraph 1 because it's a copyright. AS 13,100 is a copyrighted document that you have to pay for. You're not going to have to pay for this checklist. But we're expanding it a little bit to give you some guidance, both for you and for our own auditors. There's a large discussion going on right now. If we go in and we look at section 435, paragraphs 1 to 3, how are we going to assess the supplier? The RM 13,009 has suggestions on how you're going to meet that, but then, you know, your customers can still come in and do this and do that and do that. We're trying to standardize how we, your customers, are going to address that. So we're working heavily on that. We're trying to build in as much of these decisions in the guidance so that there'd be no surprises if we were to come in and do an audit. It should be following the same checklist. We, the OEMs, will also use the same checklist. Hopefully it gets to the point where we can use the same checklist for our audits as well of you. So everybody's using the same audit checklist. You fill this in for a GE audit in March. I come in July, you just copy and paste all of the relevant information into my checklist, and you know, you've saved yourself 80% of the work probably, because it's all going to be based on the same thing. Oh yeah, I got to talk. And then the reference documents. So there's a column in there for reference documents. We're thinking of adding another column for where it exists today in case you want to go see it. But the reference documents, we're going to get more specific on that. Say, look, for this question, go to RM such and such, section such and such, and it'll explain to you what you need to do. So it's going to be a much better tool, but we have to agree among the members, you know, how we're going to address this on a question by question basis. We're working on it. We're trying to help you. Hopefully it comes out this month, but there are still some key issues that have to be discussed. Okay, so we want to help you. We don't want to become an audit to you. We really don't, but we have to in some cases. But that's what we're looking forward to. Okay, so hopefully that's enough. And I think next, back to you.
Not off. Okay, can you still hear me? Okay, so Jim said something that's very important. And, you know, he talked about the audit checklist, but it really was our way of trying to help you as our suppliers, right? And so one of the ways that we have been trying to keep the dialogue going both ways is we've been sending out surveys. And so I pull these together and I send them out usually about a month before each of the supplier forums. Yes, the last 2 were virtual, but this one is now in person. So, you know, it went out in August of 2021, April of 2022, and then now again in September of 2022. And really, these surveys are targeted to help us develop how we can better help you as the suppliers, right? And how we can pull together plans. We're now coming into Q4 of 2022. You know, compliance is right around the corner. You'll see a lot of the topics today are really driven by the feedback that we've gotten within these surveys. So, you know, I want to just talk about some of the responses. Some of these charts too, it's, you know, if we talk about familiarity and, you know, after just listening to Jim, if you're in that point where you're not yet finished with your 13,009, maybe this will make you feel a little bit better because you're not the only one, right? So this is all a journey together. So when we talk about familiarity, we have 80% of our suppliers that were surveyed that are already saying that they've read the entire standard and they've started to absorb it. You know, there's still a little bit of a gap there. We still have a little bit of time. So please go out there, you get a copy of this, start to analyze it, get your RM 13009 and do your gap analysis, and then really document those gaps that you may have with your customer. Implementation status. Now you can see it is trending in the right direction, right? We have 50% that already have a gap closure plan in place or feel that they're compliant. That other 50%, 40% of it is working on it right now. So a little more work to do. We have another quarter until we get there. And like Jim said, through the audit process, that's when we're going to start to, uncover a lot of these gaps that may not already be documented. It is better and beneficial to actually go through the RM 13009, document that closure plan with your customer so that it's out in the open and you can work with it together and you can partner together. I know Lisa had mentioned before, a lot of you are suppliers to, more than just one of the OEMs that we have represented here. The average respondent has 3.75 AESQ customers. We'll round that to 4, I guess. But you can see, really the big hitters here are just GE Aviation, Rolls, and Pratt Whitney. But it's important to note that the whole reason we did this was because we had multiple suppliers that we were using, and we wanted to align on these standards to make things easier. We asked, what are your biggest concerns with implementation? And I asked this question in all 3 surveys. And over time, the number one was APQP, right? And for all 3 surveys, number one was APQP. So we do have Ricardo from Rolls-Royce here who's going to dive into that in a little bit. Human factors. We have, Catherine has been leading the communities of practice, training sessions. There are things available out there to you that will help you through these. So when I send these surveys out and I ask, this is really kind of driving the behaviors that we have in developing those trainings, developing those webcasts, developing those special topics at these supplier forums. So I'm going to do a poll here right now. You can scan the QR code. It should actually just go right into the poll now. But what are your specific concerns with implementing APQP? And this should be a free-form text. But this will go right to Ricardo and Carl Evans, who's the APQP SMIG lead. So I'll give everybody a few moments to just kind of add some things in there and then give the feedback to the team for the next supplier forum. Forward. Okay. Thank you very much for your input. I will make sure that this gets passed to the APQP team as they continue to develop tools for the supply base. Now, What are the specific concerns with implementing human factors? And I'll pause here for a few minutes. As people are typing too, I will say we do have a lot of resources on both of these topics at our AESQ webpage. So I would encourage everyone to go there as well. There's past webcasts that are available, and then also on LinkedIn, the communities of practice. Okay, thank you all for your input. Okay, so something that's interesting to note here is we have almost 50% of the suppliers that we surveyed that have less than 200 employees. And so a lot of the smaller businesses, you know, as I was going through and reading some of their free form, you know, a lot of them were asking for help. And so one of the ways that the AESQ can help, you know, really reach out to your member companies, perform your RM 13009 gap analysis, and talk to them about what your concerns are and work with them to work through those concerns. Like I said before, we have those communities of practice on LinkedIn, and they are available. Those are areas where you can just go in, sign up, and if you have questions for the specific topics like APQP or human factors, sub-tier management, all of these areas, we call them subject matter interest groups, have these LinkedIn pages and places where you can go and just ask anyone within the industry questions that you may have. And it's real time. People have been getting answers right away. So also today we have 3 suppliers that are going to talk to best practice examples. So a few of you had responded and said, you know, I'd like to see how someone has been successful in implementing. So we do have 3 suppliers that are going to talk to their implementation and deployment plans today. Now, even while I was standing here, I did see for both APQP and human factors that training is a big concern. You know, I know that this is a new standard and everyone wants to know the best way to do these things, what it actually means. So, you know, we're really continuing to develop those in those specific areas. But I just wanted to highlight as well, you know, what the expectations are for the overall AS 13100 training and its requirements. And so what we're saying is that, you know, people shall complete the 3-day foundations training. If you are not trained by the end of the year, the foundations training will need to be in the closure plan. And so what we're asking for is 1 person per site, a quality leader that is well versed in the AS 13100 plans. And so I'm going to go to the next poll as well and really, you know, how can the AESQ help you with training? And, you know, not just for the AS 13100 overall and the foundations, but, you know, being more specific, like, do you want to see more live training sessions? There was a live training session here the last 2 days, which I believe we had 35 attendees. Options to certify a company's training. I know Parker Meggitt was looking at some options where they're doing more of a train the trainer, which you'll hear about. Auditor training class from the AESQ. It is not available now, but you know, how could we work with either the IAQG or other certification bodies to help the suppliers? So these are really just ideas. So as I go into the poll, you know, how can we help you with the training requirements. And I'll pause there for a moment. These are longer ones. Everybody's still typing. Barry, I'll send this to you. Okay, I thank you all for your feedback. Like I said in the beginning, we're really just trying to keep the dialogue going both ways in how we can partner with you as the supply chain to the AESQ. Okay, so I know I talked about this a little bit before, but really just when you see these surveys, please fill them out, because we do take the feedback and we do drive a lot of actions through our teams, different training overviews and opportunities, as well as how we start to build different webcasts and give out information through the different channels. In today's event, you are going to see, and really this is in response to some of the free-form text that I got, but we will have how to get involved in the AESQ. The FAQ panel, we have a few people that are going to sit up here and give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have had. There's also the boards out in the back if you'd like to write those on there, just so you don't lose the idea as you go through the event. Again, I'd like to highlight the Communities of Practice on LinkedIn. That is a great resource to just go and ask questions real time with the community, with the aerospace community. And then we have three partner suppliers here that are going to go through some best practice examples. So I thank you for your time. I believe now we're going to go on a break for 15 minutes. There's plenty of snacks back there, as well as water and coffee and juice. Thank you.
I think I'll also take this opportunity to mention we had some good advice over the break from a few of you, is from a question perspective, we can handwrite them, but we also have in your QR code where you're taking, in Slido, you're taking the polls, there's also a Q&A section. And I see that there's already a lot of good questions there, and you're able to vote on those questions too. So if somebody has already put in a question that you like, you can like it, and then we can kind of start answering from the top to the bottom. So feel free to, as you go, as you hear speakers, as you talk to each other, put those questions in. All right, so next we are gonna kick off a section for APQP and PPAP. So Ricardo Banuelas is going to talk to us from Rolls-Royce on APQP and PPAP. Thanks.
Thank you. Can you hear me well? Yeah. Thank you. Obviously, APQ and PPAP has a lot of questions, right? It was #1 in the polls about they want to know more about it. I have 15 minutes planned for this. Obviously, we cannot cover all the APQ PPAP in 15 minutes, but I'm going to be in the panel for the questions and answers, right? So I can help you with that a little bit more, right? So what I'm going to tell you today through is why APQ PPAP is important, what is new on AS 30100, right? and how to incorporate this into the product introduction process. Then towards the end, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. So you're going to raise your hands, old-fashioned kind of stuff, right? And then we have a discussion, so it's more of a conversation here, right? So if you look at the APQP PAP, right? APQP PAP has been there for some years. The AS standard, the 9145, was published 6 years ago, right? And it's been implemented that in the supply chain for some days, right? For some years. So what is new on an AS 30100? So I was saying that the standard on APQP PAB is the AS 9145 has been in place for the last 6 years. So what is new on this AS 30100, right? So there's not a lot of things new, right? So it's good for you to hear that. If you look at the 29 pages that is in there, it's just one additional page that is increased on the new standard, and it's just clarification of things, right? It's nothing particularly new. What is new though is the RMs, right? So we have published the RMs, and it has 160 pages, so really, really good practice, right? That takes you through how to implement it, right? Based on the best practice. So the RMs, if you haven't seen that, is a really, really good source. The AS13100 on PPAP and APQP, it just say refer to 9145, right? So it's not a lot of new things. As I say, the RMs are free for everyone. You can download them. Over 100 people contributed to that. So it's a lot of good practice that you can find in there, right? So if you look at why it's important APQP PAP, right? At the end of the day, what we want all of us to do is improve quality and reduce costs, right? So that's the primary objective of that. And I will add, if you improve quality, you will improve delivery too, right? So that's what we're trying to do in here. When we have higher quality in our industry, obviously, that leads into a safer product. So a lot of you in the previous poll say, hey, one of the problems or one of the challenges on APQP PAP is the resources, right? Which is true. I'm not going to say it's not a case. But what we're trying to exemplify here is there is 2 ways to see this, right? So you will need additional resources in the development of your product with APQP PAP as compared to traditional. But your product will mature quicker, and all the resources that you have right now in doing MRV, doing concessions, doing containment for escapes and so on, that will be reduced because you mitigate the problems before they go into market, right? So that's the logic behind this. All of us spend a lot of time doing concessions, doing containment, doing root cause analysis for escapes and so on. So the idea is that you focus more on the preventive approach at the beginning, so you don't have those problems, right? And it has a couple of benefits here. If you do that, your process will mature quicker. And also, if you plan to transfer a product, you will be able to do that faster as well, because you have the knowledge of that product and that process that it can be transferred to another place quickly, right? So it's what we're trying to hear. It's a foundation for ongoing change management, right? So source changes and things like that, right? Now, if we look this, if we view the APQP as a flight, it has a departure, you're in the air, and then you land somewhere, right? So what we're trying to do here is the 5 phases, trying to exemplify that, right? So the first phase on the planning is planning what you're gonna do, right? And if you look at the planning, there is 8 deliverables, right? And some people are a bit scared, like, oh, it's a lot of deliverables because we have 8 for the planning phase. But it's a lot of things that you normally do, and I think you are doing that already. Otherwise, you will not be here. It's trying to understand why the design intent, why the rate, when it's going to be implemented. So those things that everyone does already. What we're trying to do here is put that into international standard that is simpler for everyone, right? So once that you understand the plan deliverables, you go into the flight, and it's where all the APQ PPAP elements are we going to do, right? So when I call elements and events, right? So the events are, we have 12 of them, 12 events, and there are just milestones that we go when we implement APQ PPAP, right? So we have 12 different things. Many of them you already do. So for example, one is a fair. So I'm pretty sure that everyone has fairs for your products and so on. So some of the deliverables are already there. It's not a lot of new things. And then we have 27 elements or building blocks, right, that compose the APQ PPAP. So when they say, oh, Ricardo, it's a lot, right? Or you say to Rolls-Royce and GE, it's a lot, you know, we need to do eight deliverables for planning, 12 events, 27 elements. It's a lot, right? And it's where people are saying, well, what about the resources and that kind of things, right? So not everything applies for every single case, right? So many people are asking, hey, when does this apply to you, right? And the AES 30100, the first thing they say it tells to you is where does apply. And it's basically, you have a new product, you apply this. If you're changing your product, you apply this. If you are changing from one source to another, you apply parts of this because you are not going to question the design again because you already had that design. So some of the elements are reduced from 27 to a different number. Or the other aspect is if you're changing your process, right? So some elements, not the 27, will apply to that change, right? So basically, it just says if we're going to change something, then you apply APQ PPAP. But depending what you're changing is how many elements of that you will apply, right? Because we have product-specific elements, we have process-specific elements, and product and process validation elements. So depending what you're trying to do, it depends how much you apply for this, right? So this is the questions that I have for you, right? And it's going to be very old-fashioned. You're going to raise your hand when I tell you to do that, right? But the first question I have for you, right? So the topic is the first, is in yellow, and the gray is the question. So the first one I have, referring to planning deliverables, APQ PPAP events, and the elements, do you think that each of them are required to be used every time? Raise your hand. You think that yes, you require that every time? So no one thinks that, right? So which is really good because that's the correct answer. It depends on the change, right? So some of them are applicable depending on the type of change, right? And it's the reference material. It has a lot of really good tables which tell you exactly which one is applicable in what case, right? So the next question is, referring to APQP design, development and validation activities to product and process, should this solely be delivered by one function within your business? So raise your hand if it's yes. Oh, you know all of this already. I don't know why I'm talking to you guys. You know this, right? Yeah, it's not, right? It's not. This is a team sport, right? So I know that majority of people are here from quality, but it's a team sport, right? So talking about design needs to be involved. We're talking about rates, planning and control needs to be involved. Talking about method manufacturing, engineering needs to be involved, manufacturing engineering, and so on, right? So it's a team sport. You are doing only that in quality, you will not be successful, right? And the last question I have for you is, should this be an integrated part of your organization project management and review structure? So raise your hand if you think it's a yes. Yep, I think the majority you got it right? So yes, and it's a pass criteria for that. So if you integrate this into your planning, for example, in Rolls-Royce, we have two key projects or two key processes that needs to be integrated. Is the new product instruction process and is the source and method change. if we integrate this element into that, that's the way we work. So we work in an APQ PPAP manner, and it's a lot easier to everyone, right? So it's not a parallel world, it's the way we work, and we include this into our processes, right? So I say it's just an introduction to APQ PPAP. I'm gonna be here for more questions, and I'm sure you have a lot more questions, so write your questions down and ask me later this afternoon, right? But I have a survey next, right? So the question here in your phones, how capable is your business in deploying APQ PPAP? Okay, so the majority of the people think they're capable. With the majority say, yeah, you're not only capable, but also have an improvement plan to increase that capability, which is really good. And also the second is capable, but not have plan to increase capacity. You're probably thinking that you have enough capability to do this. And my personal experience, you always learn something new on APQ PPAP, so it's something that you keep working and learning on that aspect. All right, so I say I'm gonna be here for questions if you need, but that's the end of the presentation for me. So next we're gonna have a really interesting topics on case studies of companies gonna do that. So the first one is JNL. Maybe let me see which one is here. The next one is Sean King. He's the director of engineering for JNL Machining, and he's gonna take us through this.